My name is Susan Adger. My family's been in Hillsborough County for 5 generations. And however, my nuclear family moved around a lot. So I've lived all over Florida and Georgia and Texas. But the only home I really felt like I had was my grandmother's home in Tampa. As I mentioned, my family's been here for 5 generations, and for decades we would get together every year, 3 times a year, for family reunions, which kept us all close. And since most of them lived in Florida, you know, people would come from all over the state, but that was really nice to have them so close. And a lot of people don't have that these days. But a close, supportive family is the best thing in the world. When my last child left home, I remember coming home from work that day to a very quiet house. There were no smelly shoes by the front door. There were no dirty dishes in the sink. There was no loud music. And I sat on the sofa, and I clearly remember this. I just felt really sad to be there all by myself. And that lasted about maybe 10 minutes. And then it occurred to me that I had a whole new life to lead, and I could do whatever I wanted. As I mentioned, my grandmother's home was the only place I ever really felt like was mine. And every summer when we went to visit her, she would tell us stories about these crazy relatives who lived in Mango, which is a very, very small town in Hillsborough County. And I started writing fictional stories about some of those characters. The name of the book is Seashells, Gator Bones, and the Church of Everlasting Liability. And the town that this takes place in is called Toad Springs. The name for the Church of Everlasting Liability came from the idea in the congregation that in order for us to help each other, we have to know everybody's business. So you're liable for your neighbor. So it gives people license to be nosy. In this story, Sweetie Mooney is opening a beauty shop in her Aunt Carrie June's kitchen. And she has a customer she hasn't seen before who just wants a little touch-up, a little color in her hair. So, and this is from Sweetie Mooney's point of view. The night before, I mixed some ground up henna leaves with lemon juice till it's about as thick as mashed potatoes, then let it sit overnight. The next morning, after I get Iona washed and combed out, I rub the henna in real good and put an oilcloth scarf over it. That's to keep the heat in and help the color set. While she's sitting at the dining room table drinking coffee and trading lies with Carrie June, I go rinse my hands. I know I'm in trouble when I wash off the brown goop and see my fingers are bright orange. I feel like a raccoon trapped in a garbage can. I go back in the dining room and peek under the oilcloth scarf, then say, "I think you're ready to rinse, Iona." "Oh, goody," she says. "I can hardly wait to see." As soon as I start getting the goop off, I know she's going to look like a Sarasota circus clown. "How is it?" she says. "Can you tell a difference?" "Well, yes, ma'am," I say. "For sure you can tell a difference." "Let's see." She leans her head over so her hair falls forward and pulls a strand in front of her face. She looks at it, then at me, then back at her hair. "What in the hell is this?" she screams. "Well," I say, "turned out a little brighter than I'd figured. I think maybe when it's dry." "Ah!" She's screaming like she caught her hand in the meat grinder. She starts pacing the kitchen. "This isn't brown, it's orange. Where's a mirror? What have you done to me?" Carrie June comes running into the kitchen. "What's wrong? What happened?" She stops and covers her mouth with her hands. "Carrie June," Iona screams, "get me a mirror." Carrie June says, "I don't think you want a mirror, Iona." I was taught when I started writing to have the character in mind, know the whole plot of the story and how everything's going to end. And I tried doing that, but it just never worked for me. So what I do instead is come up with a character and just kind of follow that character where he or she goes. When they go to answer the door and open it up, I'm with them to see who's there. I like to keep it light because there is just so much negativity around these days, and I would like to do something to help people smile once in a while. So that's really the kind of writing I enjoy most and do best, I think. I've completed another book that follows the Seashells book. It's the same characters, the same town. I'd like to share one of the stories from Moonbeams, Mushrooms, and A Girl Called Bob. This is part of one of the stories. In this story, Gussie Greenfield is talking about her best friend's daughter, Lily. My best friend is Midge Mallet, and her daughter, Lily, is 6 feet tall and skinny as a cattail and has a great sense of humor, which is what you always say about somebody who ain't good looking. Either they have a great sense of humor or a good personality. But Lily really was funny in high school, always cracking jokes. The fellow she ended up marrying was Bean Benson. Now he was pretty short and had a different look about him. Was a little chunky with dark skin that come from his great-great-granddaddy's Seminole Indian blood, and he had his mama's Irish blue eyes and curly red hair. He had just the right combination of both sides that altogether made him look kinda, well, let's just say once you saw him, you'd remember him. They first met one Saturday night down at the roller skating rink over in Plant City. Everybody was going round and round when the Bean tripped over his skates. There were 2 sizes too big because they didn't carry men's shoes that were small enough and his feet were too wide to fit into the ladies'. But he was hell-bent on going skating, and nothing stopped the Bean once he made up his mind about something. Lily was skating right behind him in a race with her best friend, Anna Lou, and was looking back over her shoulder to see how far ahead she was. She could always beat Anna Lou, who weighed too much because of a glandular problem, and anyway, Lily didn't see the Bean spread out on the floor. She tripped and flew right past him and landed way over on the other side of the rink, and Anna Lou landed right on top of him. Before it was over, there were 6 skaters lying on the floor, 1 with a broken leg and 3 with sprains of one kind or another. It was the biggest pileup in the history of the Plant City roller rink, and that record was never broken till the place closed when old man Slidell went to jail for refusing to pay taxes after he decided the government was trying to cheat him. Anyhow, once Lily got up and saw she wasn't hurt, she was really mad and lit into the Bean right there, with all the boys hollering and all the girls crying, trying to see which of their bones were broken. The Bean just stayed on the floor where he fell, because once he got Anna Lou to move, he found that along with the bad shoulder, he'd hurt his knee and couldn't get up. So he just sat there with his mouth hanging open, watching Lily skate from one side of him to the other, giving him a piece of her mind. That Lily had a temper hiding down there among all them jokes she liked to tell, and once it saw the light of day, there was no stuffing it back in. When I give book talks, I always encourage people to sit down with the older people in their family and write down their history or record it in some way. We did this with my grandmother many years ago, but all we had to work with was an audio cassette. And today, to be able to still hear her voice, the way she told her stories, the old-timey sayings she used, her vernacular from the 1930s is just wonderful. It brings her alive. And I encourage everyone to write about the family stories so they can all be passed down. For years, I've been a member of a group called Publish or Perish. Everybody reads a piece of their work and then we all critique it. It always helps to get another point of view on whatever you're writing. And their skill, their talent, their empathy, their understanding, and their wisdom about writing have just been irreplaceable. Every time I have a book published, I try to read it. And I can't because I want to change something by the third page. And it's just an exercise in frustration. So once it's printed, it's printed. One thing I want to be sure to mention is this book. It's called A Quiet Voice, and I wrote it with Eugene Hairston, who is a good friend of mine. He went to Vietnam, as so many did back in the day, and came home with PTSD and an alcoholic who was addicted to drugs. He gradually started selling drugs. He was sent to prison many times. He lived homeless on the streets in Tampa for 8 years. And today he is in a management position at the Veterans Hospital in St. Petersburg. He is a man of dignity and respect, and I feel very fortunate to have known him. I want to thank Gray Gecko Publishing, and specifically Jason Adelot, who is the publisher, for working with me these last few years. If you would like further information about my books, you can go to my website, susanadger.com, or you can find them on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. The only message I have for my readers is to sit back and relax and enjoy it, and don't take life so seriously. Thank you so much.